Chapter 5. Father, 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 help us. Lord Second and First, two of a kind, came to Equestria once upon a time. They confronted corruption and began a crusade that ended in tragedy that fateful day. Now Second was trapped in his prison of stone, one lonely god, so far from home. But pony kind he cannot forget Lord's first last fight, the one that cost him his life. Now ponies may wonder what waits after death. The princess answers no question and denies all requests. But Lord First now resides in that shadowy place, forever waiting there, contemplating his fate. It's said that he's the gatekeeper, that he judges our sins, that he will be forever waiting till his companion joins him, because the human knows the secrets of what lies on the other side. He knows the eventual fate of all pony kind. Although you may feel you'll never experience such power, you'll feel it on your life's final hour. For the most righteous of ponies, from the worst of the worst, at the gate between worlds, we'll all meet Lord First. Legend of First, from the Brotherhood of Man's holy book, Fall from Grace. Second leaned back in his chair. Carol, I got the job. We're going out tonight. The room was empty and dark. Some time had passed. Now was the perfect time to make his move. Studio's got us working on some new show. He stood up to the chair and ran over to the wall on the side of the room. Well, that's what I said. However, I've heard some big names attached to it. Who knows, might be fun. Gingerly, the human wetted his finger as if he was about to test the wind and pressed it against the wall. No, you mean it? I get to write the opening episodes? The wall didn't react. Mr. Thiessen, you will not be disappointed. I've already got a great idea for a villain. He opened the top button of his shirt and felt around his chest. He stopped bleeding. Now was as good a time as any. He's an alien, see? He jumps from one pony to another and uses their bodies to get around. His goal is to try to possess the princess, and the main six was to stop him with the elements of harmony. Here's the catch, though. The elements don't work when he controls one of them, so they have to outwit him first. The human looked back at the table. Hopefully equestrian physics were loose enough for this to work. I call him Slisk. Slisk the Scourge. Their room included a waterbed. Mr. Chant was now jumping up and down on it happily and sliding around. Gold Coin and Soft Spoken were both doing their own thing now. The business pony had immediately retreated into the bathroom upon arrival to their suite to preen himself like a swan. He was used to this sedate life of high society, and walking all that distance across the fields and hills, and especially that the final stretch of the mountain, had taken a toll on him. Soft-spoken, despite being several times his age, and not exactly in an active profession himself, had somehow coped much better. He was currently inspecting the bookshelf for anything interesting to read. As a butler, he rarely got free time during his usual work, and he was not allowed to abuse the facilities of Sparkle Manor for his own entertainment, so he used all his free time for reading. He said to himself. Read it, boring. This is a children's book. Read it. What the hell's going on here? He pulled out a book with his teeth and looked at the cover. Yeah, it was that same trashy romance novel that all those reviews in Equestria Daily were currently raging about. It was a recent release, and it had earned a lot of hate really fast. He couldn't possibly think why he didn't know anything about it, but something about the book made Pony's blood boil. Let's have a read of you, then. Satisfied at his choice, the former butler walked back over to his own bed and jumped onto it. He dropped the novel onto the quilt and opened it on the first page. Hey, Softy! The old stallion looked up from his book to find that Gold Coin had finally vacated the bathroom. He was much cleaner looking now, but he abandoned his suit and tie. We hit the jackpot here, he said. I'm still not happy about what we had to do to get it, but this place is sweet. My own mansion doesn't look this nice. Look at the size of these beds here. This one's full of water, Mr. Chant added. It's like standing on top of a giant party balloon. Don't stand on it like that, Mystic, Soft-Spoken protested. They're not meant for that. You'll end up bursting it, and you'll make the princess mad. I'll leave him alone, Softy. He's probably not even heavy enough. Mr. Coin, those beds are fragile, and... Gold Coin leaned down and snatched the older pony's book, which he tossed over to Mystic's bed. Hey, kid, you like reading. Knock yourself out. Mystic immediately stopped jumping and wriggled across the bed to reach the book, which he immediately levitated in front of him and began to read through. The butler, meanwhile, was giving Gold Coin the evil eyes. I was reading that, he said. And now the kid's reading it, Gold Coin replied. We all have to make sacrifices, Softy. I'm going to get something from the kitchen. Captain Chainmail patrolled the halls of the castle. Unlike Luna's throne room, the rest of the Camelot castle, or palace depending on who you asked, was brightly lit at night times. It was some consolation to the guards that were uneased by the darkness. Besides, in case there was ever a break-in, it just made sense tactically if your night watch ponies could actually see. Not that he was on night watch, though. Captain Chainmail was just on his way from the gate to talk to the guards stationed there. A lot of crazy stuff had been going on in the castle lately. Luna and Celestia had both foregone royal duties tonight to interrogate prisoners, including, among others, the mythical human, who's supposed to be impossible to hit, except not, and the unicorn who claimed to actually be a living bomb. And that wasn't even getting started on that red machine, the dragon sleeping in the ballroom who may or may not be possessed by an alien parasite, the fact that Princess Luna instructed all the guards to be on the lookout for a bunch of harmless nobles from the Sparkle family, whom he had heard from a reliable source to be secretly evil cultists. Apparently, the butler walked all the way from Sparkle Manor to Camelot to hand the princess the most powerful weapon in history, and a list of ponies who were part of the most elusive order that had plagued Equestria. Life was weird sometimes. Soldiers! He barked as he approached the front gate. Any news? The gate was protected by a group of 5 guards tonight, who turned to face him as he approached. Sir, one of them said. No sign of Sparkles yet, sir. And why would you be on the lookout for us? Chainmail turned his head slightly to the side to see at least 3 of his targets waiting right there. Sir Ancient Tome, Lady Arcane Arts, and Private Ironhoof of his own daytime guard all stood in a line before them. And even better, they were all accompanied by an unidentified yellow unicorn in green earth pony and police uniform, who he was willing to bet were also with the Brotherhood. Whoa, how did we not see you? Chainmail commented. I mean, you're right there. That's impressive. Anyway, you're all under arrest. What? Tome screamed. Sir, Iron protested. Under what charges? Asked the green earth pony. Well, you're all with the Brotherhood of Man, right? So, grand theft, murder, and attempt to regicide. Tome raised a hoof and opened his mouth, as if he were about to speak, but stopped. Instead, he placed a hoof on his chin and stroked his beard for a moment. Chainmail and his guards waited patiently for a reply of some kind, until the old unicorn gave up and turned to Arcane Arts. Auntie, I got nothing, he exclaimed. Say something for me. The old lavender unicorn cleared her throat regally and stepped forward to address the guard. At first, Chainmail expected an elaborate explanation or some kind of threat, something befitting her grandness of her appearance and civility which she conducted herself with. Instead, her horn lit up. Captain Chainmail looked to the side just in time to see the guard she was targeting. Ah! In less than 3 seconds, it was over. The purple energy surrounded him, and the poor pony exploded into a cloud of ash right before the captain's eyes. Chainmail backed away from the murderous unicorn, and his guard followed his lead. Ancient Tome, who until that point had just been staring, now regained his composure and addressed the others. Screw it, we're found out anyway, he said. Every pony, attack! The other ponies didn't miss their cue. Ironhoof charged right at Chainmail as he drew his sword, lunging at his captain with it. Chainmail reacted in turn, whipping out the very same sword he used to stab second, and blocked the soldier's strike with it. At least he was getting an even opponent. The others weren't so lucky. Ancient Tome and the Yellow Unicorn mercifully seemed to lack the instant death spell, and so had grabbed their own opponent telekinetically. Tome was shaking his around in the air to disorient him, and the yellow one was ramming her victim's face into the wall repeatedly. The other 2 were already dead. One of them had his throat slit by the green police pony, and the other had exploded into ash, just like the first one. Go without us, Auntie, Tome ordered. Clear a path ahead. The older unicorn nodded and galloped full pelt down the hall Captain Chainmail had just came from. Lacking an opponent, the green earth pony soon followed. Iron, meanwhile, was pressing his attack. He jerked around erratically, and his sword strikes became unpredictable. Chainmail was having a hard time keeping him at bay and was losing ground fast. In these times of peace, guards rarely fought any pony outside of sparring, and given how long it was since he had last sparred with an officer, he was more than a little rusty. Ha! The yellow unicorn had just finished brutalizing the guard. His face was little more than red smudged inside a yellow helmet now, and the smear he had left trailing from his body up to the wall was the most disgusting thing the captain had ever seen. It was soon joined by the body of Agent Tom's rival, who, luckily, seemed to be breathing despite his condition. "I'll go find the snitches, sir," said the unicorn mare. She ran off in the same direction the others had. "You should get going too, sir," Ironhoof grunted between sword swings. "I've got this guy! Yeah!" Chainmail felt a little insulted by the implication. In all fairness, Iron was a very credible threat to him. He was out of touch after so many years working senior office. He hated spar matches. They were just like gym class back in school, a period in his life which he remembered nothing from except the image of thousands of basketballs flying at him. The moment he was high enough in office to allow it, he excused himself from the matches and never went back to them. In hindsight now, that seemed like a very bad idea. "Catch up with me later, Iron," Tom replied, before turning to follow the others. Ironhoof focused his attention back on Chainmail and lunged at him again. The white-coated pony failed to dodge or block this time. By pure luck, the blade failed to puncture his armor, but being stabbed still wasn't a pleasant experience, and the captain still felt the impact of the attack. The soldier began advancing on him. "You're a fool, Captain. You just got lucky this time," he said menacingly. "I should have stuck around to kill you when me and Frosty were robbing the royal archives." Chainmail's eyes went wide. "What?" he thundered. "That was you who killed all those ponies! You're way out of line, Private. There was a time when we hung ponies for crimes like that, and if we had my way, we'd still do it. Why give that tyrant another weapon to use against us?" Antep shouted. "Celestia and Luna are poison to this land, and the human is the cure. If you stand in the way of Equestria's salvation, you too shall die." Iron swung his sword again, nearly losing the grip from how much power he had put behind the strike. Chainmail saw his chance and made a counterattack, swinging upwards with his own sword and knocking his opponent's weapon loose. Iron's sword clattered to the ground, and the pony was left defenseless. He wasn't ready to give up, though. The demented earth pony ran to pick up the sword again. Chainmail didn't give him a chance. Before Ironhoof could bend down to grab the hilt, the captain swung again and sliced Iron's foreleg off, just below the knee guard. "Ah!" His enemy fell to the ground and began nursing the stump where his hoof used to be. Chainmail was hardly sympathetic. Sheathing his own weapon, he walked over to where Ironhoof's sword had fallen and kicked it almost to the other end of the hallway. The captain turned away from the withering pony. He trotted down the hallway in the direction of the other cultists. Halfway, he stopped to look over his shoulder. "Private dismissed." In the dark ballroom, Spike's eyes flickered open. Standing next to the dragon's face was one of the royal guards. He recognized him immediately.
"Broadsword, what are you doing here?"
Slisk noticed that despite Spike's physiology giving him a natural, booming voice, for some reason when he was in control and speaking it was as quiet as when he was in a pony. Was Spike being intentionally loud this whole time? Because if he wasn't, it didn't make much sense that his voice was quiet when Slisk was speaking through him. Perhaps when he possessed his victims, the mutations like sharper teeth and snake eyes also came with changes in vocal cords. Come to think of it, that could also explain why he stretched out his S's without knowing he was doing it. "Oh, hey, Doc," the guard replied cheerfully. "I'm here on night watch. I was going to go to the city, but then they changed my shift because the human is here now, and the castle's under attack by some cultists or something. I don't know, I wasn't listening. Point is, I came to wake up Spike to ask him to help out. I didn't expect to see you here, though, Doc."
"It has been a trying day."
"Yeah, I'll say. How'd that revolution thing go, anyway? Did the second let you down?" Slisk did something with Spike's face that looked like it was trying to convey sadness.
"Second got himself captured, and I was trapped in Spike's mind. I'm only slightly in control now, and it's difficult to maintain. Cursed Luna used an old spell on me, a painful spell."
Tisk tisk, Broadsword replied. Those princesses, always overreacting to everything, am I right?
I know. I just wanted a suitable host's body. It's not like I had to be anything special. As long as it could hold me without falling apart, it would be fine. But no. He's an alien parasite. Send him to the moon. We had a word for that back on planet Zarlo. It was racism.
The night pony was quiet for a moment. Tragic, he said. But I still have a job to do. Doc, I need to wake up Spike, remember? I know you need the body and all, but, well, ours are ours. Priorities, you know?
So what do you want me to do?
Well, vacating the body would be a nice start.
I need a host to survive. If anybody catches me in my normal form, I'll be vulnerable.
Well, what if you got another temporary host?
That could work.
I might be able to find a volunteer around here somewhere. I'm sure some pony will be willing.
What about you?
What about me?
I could use you.
Broadsword blushed slightly. Well, I don't know, Doc. I think it might be kind of awkward. See, I have a lot of embarrassing memories from childhood. I don't know. I mean, if you're in my head,
I promise I won't look.
The guard raised an eyebrow. You promise, Doc? Do you swear you don't?
I swear.
Pinky swear? Slisk winced.
Pinky swear.
No, you have to actually do the rhyme.
Broadsword, shut up. I already promised. Don't pretend doing or not doing the pinky swear makes any less valid than my word alone. This extra formality is trivial and pointless. You're upsetting me with your lack of trust. Aren't we friends, Broadsword? Don't you trust me?
Broadsword looked up into the face of the giant purple dragon, whose snake eyes and oversized teeth betrayed a presence of evil, an alien parasite who had killed hundreds, caused misery and death for thousands of years without hesitation. He answered, Sure, we're friends, Doc. I trust you, but I just like doing the rhyme. It makes the promise seem special. I would have thought that you, being my friend, you would have indulged me just this once. I mean, considering I'm about to let you crawl inside my brain, I hoped you'd at least give me that much.
But the rhyme is childish and stupid.
I'm a childish pony, Doc. Slisk sighed heavily.
Only for you, Broadsword,
he said reluctantly. He possessed the dragon to clear his throat.
Cross my heart and hope to fly, stick a cupcake in my eye.
He reacted. There, I did it. Now you please stop humiliating me. Okay, Doctor, I'm convinced. Anytime you're ready. Exploding McGee stirred in his cell. There was a shouting coming from down the hall. He climbed out of his bunk and itched towards the bars. Whatever was going on, it was happening on the other side of the pair of red double doors at the end of the hallway. Some guards were screaming, and a splatter of red appeared on the tiny windows that they put on the door for some reason. The doors burst open at the end, giving way to a duo of ponies, an elderly lavender unicorn and a green earth pony in a police uniform. Both mares entered the hallways leading past the prison cells, in the corridor beyond. Exploding could see several bodies and piles of ashes laying on the floor. Most corpses were bleeding from the neck, and upon seeing the earth pony holding a bloody knife in between her teeth, Exploding felt his blood run cold. The two passed through almost right by him, but the old unicorn stopped and turned to look at him. Her partner quickly noticed that she had stopped and also turned to face the prisoner. They stared at each other in silence for almost a full minute. Exploding had never been more afraid in his life.
Seems the princess has been keeping a prisoner, the old mare commented. It's a real rarity. I didn't think these dungeons were still in use.
Though he was afraid, Exploding tried to keep his chipper attitude. If they didn't know he was afraid, they could do nothing to him. He had to laugh in the face of danger. Playing it safe was for wimps. He could engage them directly, and he would be just so gosh darn cheerful that they would leave him alone. That's actually how it worked in real life, right? Oh, they're not, he said happily. Celestia is just keeping them open for me.
And why would that be?
The earth pony asked curiously. Because I can explode and survive it, he exclaimed. My special talent is self-destruction. The princess was worried when I told her, and until she has it all figured out, I'm staying here in this palace. The two ponies exchanged looks. Arcane Arts suddenly looked furious.
You mean to tell me that because you have unusual abilities, the princesses are holding you captive and experimenting on you?
She was very angry. It was making the poor unicorn nervous. He didn't know what he had said wrong, but he had to tread lightly here. He didn't want to get on these ponies' bad sides. Yes? Exploit cringed on seeing her reaction. Please don't hurt me, he begged.
Excuse me, sir, said Sergeant Justice. Let me talk with my associate for a moment.
The two cultists moved aside and waited until they were out of the prisoner's earshot. Exploding McGee had retreated back into his cell to shake uncomfortably, while the two mayors huddled together to form a private discussion.
What do we do?
Asked the Earth Pony.
I don't know, Justice. This poor cultist is another victim of those tyrants, and one of the first cases of real solid proof about our claims. A pony being captured and experimented on just because Celestia doesn't understand his abilities? Is she hoping to weaponize him or something? Clearly, he has been a subject of abuse as well. He screamed, "Don't hurt me." Sounds to me like he's being mistreated by the guards, too. Should we break him out?
Arcane Arts smiled.
Let's do it.
Ancient Tome knocked the other guards aside effortlessly and strode through the hallway. The Brotherhood had planned their roles in this carefully. The plan screwed up the moment they arrived at the gate. But damn it, they didn't have any other plan. In lieu of any kind of backup, the ponies instead kept to the original plan. Auntie and Swift Justice would go to the dungeon and try to find Lord Second. Chameleon would track down his son, and possibly Goldcoin and Soft-Spoken as well. And he was tasked with finding the Reaper's Horn and retrieving it. It was possibly the most dangerous job of all. The Reaper's Horn would be under heavy security until it would be returned to the royal archives, assuming it would still be kept there anyway. He fully expected that the princesses were hanging on to it themselves, and he would actually have to go pry it from the grasp of Celestia herself to get it back. He was not looking forward to try to fight an alicorn. It would be like a mouse trying to fight a hawk. Continuing his brisk trot through the throne room, Ancient Tome passed by a door to the ballroom, which was hanging open loosely. Saponi had left recently. Curiosity getting the better of him, Ancient Tome walked into the room and stopped in his tracks upon seeing its single occupant. The purple dragon snored slightly, smoke bellowing from his nostrils with every breath. Ancient Tome knew him from the storybooks. Spike the Eternal, the last of the old dragons. His family were once at least acquaintance of Spike, but contact between the Sparkles and the ancient dragon faded a few generations back. Spike's eyes shot open. Ancient Tome watched in awe as the massive dragon rose up from his slumber and stretched his limbs, scraping the ceiling of the chamber. He yawned loudly, the sound booming through the chamber and echoing off the walls. The ceiling was actually too low for him, so Spike soon crouched down on all fours again. The unicorn waited for him to speak, wondering what this ancient being had to say to a mortal such as himself.
Hey there,
he said in a remarkably casual tone.
I'm Spike. Nice to meet you.
Damn, his voice was loud. I'm Ancient Tome. Spike's eyes widened as he leaned in close to his visitor.
Ancient Tome?
He repeated.
As in Ancient Tome from the House of Sparkle, the great-grandson of Spellbound Star?
The unicorn nodded, and Spike's eyes narrowed.
As in the same Ancient Tome, whom Celestia informs me fell in with the Brotherhood of Man?
Tome began to sweat. Spike picked up on this immediately. The bearded unicorn turned to run away, but Spike moved first. A huge clawed hand came down on him before he could move. Spike's claws dug into the ground of the chamber in front of Tome and blocked his pathway. He closed his palm, and the dragon grasped Ancient Tome in his hand and brought him up to eye level with him.
You are a disappointment and a disgrace to 1,000 years of noble ponies. I knew your forefathers. I was there at the beginning. Before even the human, there were heroes, generous and kind ponies who wanted nothing more than to help Equestria and bring about an age of peace. You and the Brotherhood are an affront to all they stood for. They would be ashamed of you.
Face to face with an enemy he had no hope in hell of beating and a fight or successfully fleeing from, Ancient Tome resorted to the next best thing he could think of, trying to justify his actions to some pony whom he could never convince.
The elements of harmony made a mistake,
he shouted.
Lord Second was a hero too. He came to free this wretched world from that alicorn tyrant you associate with. He wanted to help Equestria by giving it back its freedom. All you are doing is citing by the princess who is denying ponies that freedom.
I've heard this entire speech before,
the dragon replied coldly.
There have always been ponies like you. Every time there's a problem in your life, or you disagree with something, you cowards shout, "Tyrant!" And you point your hooves at Celestia and her sister. Let me tell you something, right here, right now. I have known the princesses for over 1,000 years. I dare say they're my last real friends. And I can tell you personally that they are every bit as wonderful, selfless, and caring ponies that they're made out to be. They care for all their subjects. I just wish certain subjects like you would see that for once.
Why all the deceptions then? Tom demanded. Celestia has been whitewashing history for thousands of years. The legend of Nightmare Moon
is completely true. I know because I was there.
Okay, what about when the Spider Legion attacked Equestria? They changed the course of the moon to drown an army of spiders under a massive tidal wave, causing hundreds of innocent deaths in a freak flood. When Celestia claims that it was the Spider Legion themselves who did it, to save their own image. But how could they have? They don't control the moon. Do you know who does? They do!
Except that it is the Spider Legion who moved the moon, using a derivative elements of harmony. They were intending to kill all those ponies. Celestia and Luna were the ones who stopped the moon from moving any further, of course. I know it because I was there too, captured by the Spider Legion at the time.
Intertome raised an eyebrow.
You were captured?
I was smaller than you are now. I couldn't really put up much of a fight.
The unicorn frowned.
Why should I trust your word anyway? He asked. You're in it with the princess. How do I know you're not just repeating lies to me?
Because what would be the point of trying to convince you of the princess's innocence when you're never leaving this castle again?
Goldcoin hummed a jaunty tune as he kept moving from one interesting item to another. The vastness of the guest room and its diverse collection of ornaments, decoration, books, and games, and occasional comfy chair kept the Earth Pony occupied as he tried to look at everything. Mystic Chant, to his credit, had kept quiet while he was reading his book. All things considered, Goldcoin could honestly say that he liked the cult. He was eager to learn, and knew not to speak unless spoken to, and when he did speak, it was always relevant to the conversation the adults were having, not just the usual interruption of inane questions or pointless observation that children usually had. To spend so much time around this kid and not be annoyed was actually really refreshing.
Hey, Mr. Goldcoin?
Speak of the devil. The Earth Pony turned his face to the little blue unicorn, who was levitating soft-spoken book just in front of him. He floated up to his face.
This book is boring.
Goldcoin looked at the cover and froze. He knew this book. He had caught his sister reading it once, and it had been a very awkward situation. Why hadn't he looked at the cover before he randomly gave it to Mystic?
Oh, is it now? He said nervously. Well, why don't you give it back to me? Here, I'll take it away.
Mr. Chant could clearly tell something was wrong, but did not protest. Quickly as he could, Goldcoin grabbed the book from his mouth and trotted over to the bookshelf where he found it, placing it back on the top shelf.
What the hell was Softy doing reading this? He thought to himself. That sly old dog. I'll be having some words with him later.
He turned around and found Mystic was standing right behind him again.
Out of curiosity, he said, just how far into that thing did you read?
Far enough. That sounded ominous.
Far enough for what?
You know what I mean. That sounded even worse.
I mean, did you reach that scene?
I did, and I've never been more disappointed. The other cults at school talk about it as if it's the funniest thing in the world, but when I got to it, it was just weird and wrong.
Goldcoin just stared at him.
What the hell are they teaching you kids in school nowadays?
The door burst open on the other side of the room, and Soft-Spoken ran in, panting.
Goldie, we've got to get out of here, he shouted. The palace is under attack. The Brotherhood of Man have come to kill us.
The business pony narrowed his eyes at Soft-Spoken. There was something off about the older stallion this time. He had no idea, but he wanted to make absolutely sure first.
Softy, I have to ask you one question, he said.
What? Goldie, this isn't the time.
I just need to know one thing before we go. Did you retrieve the Reaper's home from the kitchen like I asked?
Soft-Spoken paused.
No, I was attacked on my way down.
There it was. The younger Earth pony trotted over to the doorway, looking around the room briefly. Soft-spoken just looked nervous, and was trying to emphasize the need for urgency. He silently begged Goldcoin to hurry up, but instead of gathering his things and heading out with him, the stallion twisted around 180 degrees and bucked him in the face. The bellend went flying to the back of the corridor beyond and hit the wall hard. As he struck it, he flickered for a split second, and then suddenly changed into a yellow unicorn mare who groaned in pain. Mr. Chan ran over to the doorway, looking shocked, and the Earth pony glared down at the imposter. "Chameleon, master disguise," he sneered. "You're getting old. The real soft-spoken was never a panicky wreck like you played him. I thought you always made sure to research your role before a performance." The unicorn jumped back to her feet and growled. Mr. Chant ran up to the room in fear, but the Earth pony stood his ground and scraped a hoof against the carpet in preparation. Chameleon threw up a quick spell at her opponent, too fast for her to charge up anything powerful, but just quick enough that he couldn't dodge or bug her first. Goldcoin was launched across the room and hit the back of the wall too. Unlike Chameleon, he was lucky enough that he didn't hit his head, so he had a much quicker recovery. Missy Chan was hidden behind the waterbed at the far end of the room and was peeking out to watch the fight. She charged her former brother in arms, attempting to gore him with her horn, but Goldcoin rolled to the side and avoided her. She stopped herself before she hit the wall, but didn't turn around in time to save her from another bucking. This one wasn't as hard as the last one, so she shook it off and bucked him back. Unicorns were obviously a lot physically weaker than Earth ponies, so she held no illusions that she could really hurt him, but all she needed was a momentary distraction. She charged a spell in her horn and spun around to face her momentarily dazed opponent. Her horn exploded and a powerful shockwave flew across the room. Goldcoin was knocked back across the room and landed in a heap on the far wall, coat singed and out of breath. The rest of the room had received much the same treatment. Fixtures and furniture were all broken and smashed, while the walls and the floor were black with scorch marks, and the covers on the bed and curtains by the balcony were all shriveled and burnt. Over by the waterbed, which was now punctured and leaking all over him, Busy Chant laid against the wall, groaning and nursing the bump on his head. "Huh!" the unicorn mare gloated. "What did you think was going to happen, Goldie? You never were the most physically capable." Her horn lit up again, and Goldcoin was lifted into the air. "I'm going to enjoy this." Hey, Doc, why am I still in control?
Because when I'm in charge, you sport fangs and get snake eyes. I'm trying to hide here. This is a sneaky mission.
The two turned a corner and into another corridor. Can I just say that you sound really normal when you're just speaking in my head? No weird S's or anything.
Please don't talk to me about that. It's a very sensitive issue.
Sure thing, Doc.
And stop talking to me out loud. I can only reply mentally, so talk to me mentally. Ponies will think you're insane if they catch you talking to yourself.
I'm trying, Doc, but ever since you joined me, I can't articulate my thoughts. It's easier just to say everything. They turned another corner and entered a huge hallway with red carpets and multiple chandeliers. At the far end of it, he spotted a group of dead royal guards in a pile of ash.
Well, what if we have to talk to some pony?
Then I'll talk to them and not you. Simple. So let's consider this for a moment.
You'd better not get caught, Broadsword. I know you're not exactly the brightest, but try to be subtle.
Will do, Doc.
And stop calling me Doc. I'm not a doctor, just like my name's not Fluttershy.
Yeah, but Doctor suits you so much. So does Fluttershy, actually. But I can't think of a nickname for Fluttershy. Do I just call you Flutter or Shy? Shy shorter, but it just feels weird to say. So I'll call you Doc. I prefer Doc to Slisk anyway. I mean, what kind of name is Slisk anyway? You sound like some kind of evil wizard or something.
I am an evil wizard.
Okay, then do some tricks. Slisk stopped.
I can't when I'm not in a unicorn host.
And you're not in a unicorn host. Ergo, you're not an evil wizard. Slisk was dumbstruck. His host, Broadsword no less, had actually outsmarted him.
Touché, my friend. Touché.
Off to the side, another royal guard charged in. Broadsword looked over to him and gave him a cheerful smile. Hidden away inside his friend's head, though, Slisk stopped dead. He recognized his pony. He had possessed him before, and then later watched him stab second through the back. "Captain," Broadsword said happily. "Nice to see you again." Hey, I heard the castle's under attack from some cultists or something. Came out of hell sent me to wake up Spike, but I had no luck. Do you know what's going on? Captain Chainmail looked around nervously. He spotted the bodies and ash piles at the end of the corridor. Listen, soldier, I need your help for this one, Captain said urgently. You're right, the castle is under attack from 5 ponies, maybe more, and they're extremely dangerous. They've already gone through loads of guards. I took one of them out, a traitor from my day guard called Ironhoof, but I need your help to stop the others.
Do whatever he says, Slick ordered. It'll be suspicious if you do anything other than what you normally would.
Sure thing, Cappy, the guard replied. Just point me in the right direction. Chainmail gave him a disdainful look. Private. Yes, sir? Never call me Cappy again. Where are you taking me? Explorer looked around for any possible escape, in case worst come to worst. But he was in the Counterlot dungeon right now. The only escape route led to the prison cells. The murderous duo kept their pace either side of him and watched him closely. The green earth pony was still holding a bloody dagger in her mouth, and the unicorn had switched from cold-blooded killer to her dotting grandmother persona. The change was jarring and unnatural. Explorer was certain that she had to be possessed by some evil spirit or something. Oh, don't worry about a thing, dearie, the old mare answered. We're just going to take you someplace safe and warm, so you can get a nice cup of tea and sit by a warm fire, you poor thing. It must have been so dreadful living here. Explorer recalled an old play he had seen once about a pony with split personality disorder. By day, he was a mild-mannered innocent, but under the full moon, he transformed into a wolf, and would stab young mares to death in the shower at his motel. The play was called The Incredible Hulk. Can we not go anywhere? He asked. I'm rather comfortable here, and you ponies scare me. Scare you? The earth pony repeated. Why would we scare you? What have you got to be afraid of? Explorer looked at the floor as they passed another dead guard, with blood rushing out of his throat. No thing in particular. Up ahead, though, 2 ponies emerged from the side of the corridor. Explorer's face lit up as he recognized the first one as his friend, Captain Chainmail. Captain! He shouted. Help me! The 2 cultists were in fighting positions. Chainmail and the other guards stopped dead in their tracks. Chainmail held up his hooves in surrender, as did his companion. Whoa! Wait! He shouted. We surrender. Don't hurt him. Arcane Arts and Sergeant Justice both eased up slightly. Explorer just despaired. No, you 2 don't do anything rash now, the captain said carefully. Let him go. No pony else needs to get hurt here. Your enemies are us. He's just a prisoner here. Leave him out of it. We shall not, the old unicorn replied. This pony is innocent, and we will not allow your tyrant of a princess to experiment on him for being different. Chainmail tried to take in what she was saying, but then remembered that both these ponies were deluded cultists, and trying to reason with them or explain what was really going on would be pointless. Look, please listen to me, he said desperately. You've killed a lot of ponies here today. Good ponies. Ponies who are not only doing their job, but have no part in whatever it is you think our princes get up to. I'm not here to debate with you about Celestia and Lu's actions, or our beliefs. I just want to resolve this conflict and put an end to this bloodshed. Arcanard smiled. Release the human, then, she said. What? You heard me, Captain. Release the human and we'll let this cult here go. Chainmail hesitated slightly. Explorer's eyes darted around. Both of them were trying to think of an alternative. Any alternative. Just something that would help them get out. Explorer was certain that these monsters would kill him if he tried to use magic, and Chainmail knew that they would kill him if he made a move either. Then Broadsword stepped forward. I'll take you to his cell. Princess Celestia sighed to herself as she sat back in her throne. Out of the middle of the chamber, Luna paced back and forth erratically. The entire room was vacant of guards for the purpose of their private conversation. But so far, neither of them had been able to communicate that the situation was getting from bad to worse. I mean, all these years, said Luna. How are we supposed to know? How? We never knew anything about either of them. I can't help but feel we've made a terrible mistake. I know, dear sister, replied Celestia. What could we do, though? What could we have done? He always refused to talk. So many times we encountered him, and the first, what he was and where he came from. He was the one who refused to give us any answers, and we can hardly be blamed for being ignorant of their relationship, if they never told us about themselves. Luna turned to face her sister. Shouldn't we have been able to pick up on it, though? She asked. I never really noticed it before, but it's so obvious looking at the photographs of them both. I'm not familiar with their biology, but they look so familiar. Second always looked older because he had wrinkled skin on his forehead and his hair was always a shade of gray. Just like some older ponies' manes lose their color as they age. And the first always had the appearance of a younger pony, with a slimmer figure and bad acne. Sister. Second even had a mustache. Sister! Celestia slid off of the throne and trotted over to the dark alicorn. Luna was quiet as her sister embraced her with a wing. It's not your fault, she said. You're right. We should have guessed, but I'm the one who spent most of the time dealing with both of them. You can't be blamed for picking up on it when you only saw them 4 times. Still, though, Celestia, we killed his son. If he ever needed a reason to take revenge on us, he has it now. What have we done? Luna, we aren't the ones who killed first. Responsibility rests with us, but we never wanted to kill him. I never wanted to see any pony killed. Sometimes things happen which we just can't predict, like Steelhammer's unexpected actions during that battle. And don't forget, even if we had known who they were to each other, second and first was still a threat to Equestria as a whole, and we still would have had to fight them. Perhaps it would have ended differently if we'd known the truth, but there still would have been chaos and violence in the meantime. Luna remained silent, but the quiet was broken by the sound of a knocking on the door. It was a loud knocking, too. The sisters broke apart and faced the door as it opened, and on the other side, they could see Spike's massive form trying to squeeze into the entrance of the chamber. The two princes watched the comical scene for a moment as Spike tried to enter the throne room. Get into the throne room. He had trouble, but by contorting his body and laying on the right angle, eventually the giant purple dragon was able to squeeze his way inside without breaking the door frame. Celestia thought it very amusing at first, until she saw that Spike was carrying a prisoner. He opened his hand and dropped the bearded gray unicorn at their feet, who groaned in pain as he tried to stand up again. Ugh. Ancient Tome, Celestia said. You're on our blacklist. 2 ponies came here earlier today and gave my sister the Reaper's Horn and a list of names. A list of ponies who are part of the Brotherhood. They named you the leader. Tome glared up at the princesses. It no longer mattered. He saw no point in bothering to hide his hatred anymore. I am, he answered. Why? She asked. Why would you ever get involved with a group like the Brotherhood of Man? You're a Sparkle. You're supposed to be better than that. The Sparkles have always led the Brotherhood, Tome snarled. Ever since Twilight's day, our family has played host to their meetings and directed their forces, gathering the resources and ponies needed to make sure we always have roots everywhere in Equestria and access to everything we need to bring you down and release Equestria's rightful ruler.
You ignorant foe.
Tome looked up at Spike, whose face was nothing but pure rage.
Twilight would never have allowed such a thing within her family. She loved the princesses like a mother, and detested those who would undermine the peace she tried so hard to create. I don't know what your elders told you, but the Brotherhood's infection of your family was a lot more recent than that.
Their infection of all the families of the elements, said Luna. Soft-spoken and gold coin provided me with a list of the Brotherhood members. I count among them descendants of all the original elements of harmony. Spike looked up at her suddenly.
Are you serious, princess?
He asked. Luna nodded. We didn't gain confirmation until recently, but we traced several of them back to the elements as well as Ancient Tome and Lady Arcanos from the Sparkle family. We were able to link a unicorn named Chameleon back to Rarity, a soldier of Celestia's Day Guard called Ironhoof to Fluttershy, a racing celebrity called Sunrise to the lineage of Rainbow Dash. Spike closed his eyes and sighed. Ancient Tome just sneered angrily, not at all happy that they had gotten so many names out of the traitor Goldcoin that they had discovered that much about their origins, or that when he tried to tell the rest of them this, they simply denied it.
What about the others?
Spike asked.
Applejack and Pinkie Pie, do they have descendants among the Brotherhood?
We don't have the names of all of them, Celestia replied. We're still looking for the rest. Ancient Tome's ears pricked. They didn't have all the names. How, though? Goldie knew all their names, unless he didn't tell them something. They hadn't mentioned him, and he was in fact a descendant of Applejack. Did they not know? Did he not know that he was in the Brotherhood too? Was he withholding some names? Why? To protect himself? Or was his betrayal some sort of plan? Tome decided to keep quiet. He wouldn't expose Goldcoin yet. If he had some ulterior motive, he wanted to see what it was first. As for you, she continued, you will be held here for questioning. I will get a guard summoned to take you to your dungeon. Goldcoin screamed in pain as he smacked into the wall again. Chameleon was levitating his body and throwing him into objects as she'd done many of the guards before. This time, though, she intended to draw it out and make her victim suffer. She didn't hit him hard, just hard enough to hurt him and make him bleed, but not enough to kill him right away. "Ah!" the Earth Pony moaned. "Stop! Please!" She didn't let up. The unicorn threw him against the wall yet again. As the torture continued, she felt a sting in her flank and heard a loud zapping sound, causing her to suddenly drop her victim. Curious, she turned her head to face the source of the annoyance, and saw Missy Chant waiting behind her. He looked angry at her, which was just adorable. "Let him go!" the little coach shouted. He fired a spell at her, a lightning bolt that hit her flank again and caused that same stinging sensation before. Nah. Chameleon picked him up and threw him to the other side of the room, too. This time she did it a lot more gently, enough so that he didn't go flying into anything, but it still hurt him. Satisfied that the cold was dealt with, she shifted focus back to Goldcoin, but found to her surprise that another pony had appeared before her. "You hurt either one of them again, and you'll regret it." It was that old butler, soft-spoken, the one that had caused all this. He would have to suffer too. She had charged another spell. "I mean it," he interrupted. "Do not make an enemy of me." Chameleon faltered. The stallion wasn't exactly very physically imposing, neither did he even sound very threatening, but something about his words was just disarming. "No!" she protested. "Tommy warned me about you. You're not brainwashing me!" She shot the spell at him anyway. The old pony flew back into the wall just like Goldcoin had, and a small cut appeared on his forehead. She hit him with less force than she did the other two, but somehow knocked him out cold anyway. With an evil grin, the unicorn turned her attention back to Goldcoin. She looked over the balcony. An idea came to her. Mystic Chant looked up at her as she trotted past, and Goldcoin floated lazily behind her, bruised all over his face and burned all over his body. He looked desperately at the colt and disappeared with his soon-to-be murderer through the curtains and into the large balcony outside. In the cold night air, Goldcoin flailed about helplessly and tried to get away. Chameleon obliged and dropped the pony onto the balcony floor. He tried to get away, but she held him down with magic and then focused her attention upwards. Directly above her was a huge gargoyle statue decorating the palace, in addition made by Luna about 200 years ago, when she went through that period of obsession with an old architectural style. The gargoyles looked down at him hungrily. Actual gargoyles hadn't been around for a while now, but the one hanging above them was equally terrifyingly realistic. "Yes, that'll do nicely." Chameleon reached out to the gargoyle with her magic and tried to pull it off its perch. It was a lot heavier than it looked, and trying to bring it down was a pain. To compensate, she let go of Goldcoin to save herself some magic, knowing he couldn't go far anyway. The statue came loose, and she floated above her. It was difficult to move, but she could do it if she had focused. "Now it's the end of you, Goldie." The yellow unicorn grinned maniacally and lowered the statue. Goldcoin looked terrified. He knew exactly what she was planning. She began to move it over him, and... Ah! For a split second, Chameleon was annoyed by a familiar stinging sensation, but then stopped. She had been standing beneath it. She was stupid! It was such a stupid mistake! The statue had fallen on top of her instead of Goldcoin. She had failed to move it over her victim in time, and instead, the huge lump of stone landed on her instead. Mystic looked in horror at what he had caused. A sickening crunch and a cry of pain from the unicorn could be heard as the statue made contact, and the resulting mess was difficult to look at. The young colt just stood there, mouth agape. On the other side of the pile of rubble that buried Chameleon's body, Goldcoin shifted and pulled himself over the top of it, and smiled weakly at Mystic Chant, and then fell unconscious. Broadsword walked over confidently to the cultists. Captain Chainmail just felt betrayed and said nothing. "Wise move, soldier," said the Green Earth pony. "You're making the right decision." The guard smiled at her. Sergeant Justice returned it. Without warning, though, Broadsword spat directly in her face and ran for it. "Ah!" she cried out. The two cultists prepared to attack, but the police sergeant began screaming. Arcane Arts turned to see what was wrong with her, and saw to her horror that a set of massive jagged teeth were now growing from her mouth. Justice was screaming in fear, not pain. "No! What did you do?" she shouted at the guards. Chainmail looked on, completely bewildered. The Earth Pony was mutating right before his eyes, and all he could do was stare.
"I'm fine, Lady Arcane Arts."
Chainmail recognized that voice. Oh, sweet Celestia, no.
"Now, stay still."
The pony formerly known as Justice leapt onto the elderly mare and tackled her to the ground. She opened her mouth, revealing a long, forked tongue. Arcane Arts couldn't scream. She was tougher than that. She began to chart a spell, but then the purpose of the tongue became evident, as it wrapped around her horn, and the spell was suddenly negated. "I didn't know he could do that," Broadsword mused. The tongue withdrew from its victim's horn, and then shot down her throat instead. Exploding McGee took this opportunity to run away over to two guards. The three stallions watched in awe as Slisk pulled back against the cultist, and caused the tongue to snap in half. The serpentine features immediately receded back into the Green Earth pony's body, and she fell into the ground limply. Lady Arcane Arts, meanwhile, seemed to have a heart attack as she started to wiggle around erratically. She stopped.
"Back in control, just like old times."
The old unicorn climbed back to her feet and revealed that she had now gained Slisk's signature mutations as well. She grinned darkly at them and then levitated the other cultist up beside her, which she turned her attention to.
"Rotten to the core, this one. Calls herself Justice, and pretends to uphold the law, and yet has killed so many innocents herself. I'm disgusted."
The purple glow around the pony intensified for a moment, and less than a second later, Sergeant Justice exploded into a cloud of ash. The ponies present were all coated in gray, as her remains blew throughout the prison. Chainmail was frozen in place, and his pony's legs were shaking. Broadsword remained as cheerful and oblivious as ever. "Nice work, Doc," he complimented. "I think that last spell was a little harsh, though."
"Maybe,"
Slisk conceded.
"Perhaps I should practice a bit more restraint in the future."
The addition of the new voice caught the attention of every pony remaining. Chainmail, Broadsword, Explodey, and Slisk all looked over to the entrance of the prison, where a stunned guard stood at the steps, accompanied by an equally stunned ancient tome, wearing a magic restraining bolt around his horn. "I was told by the princess to bring this new inmate here," he exclaimed. Should I come back later?" 20 minutes later, and every pony gathered once more in the royal throne room. Celestia and Luna sat atop a small set of steps and looked down at the colorful collection of individuals waiting in the throne room. Spike stood up by the back wall, cramped up as much as possible so he didn't take up too much space. Sir Ancient Tome and the possessed Lady Arcane Arts both wore restraining bolts, and waited by the side of the throne, flanked either side by a number of angry-looking guards, eager to avenge their fallen friends. Broadsword, the rogue guard, was cuffed at the hooves and being watched closely by Captain Chainmail, and Explodey McGee, for the first time in a while, wandered around freely and just satisfying his natural curiosity by inspecting the decorations or talking to some other ponies. He was currently conversing with Soft-Spoken and Mystic Chant, just recovered from their own ordeal. Soft-Spoken was smiling in spite of his injury, while the young colt just looked disturbed. Sadly, there was no sign of Goldcoin. He was still in the infirmary along with Ironhoof. Their arrests made that evening. "Okay, every pony, quiet, pipe down," Celestia ordered. The ponies all turned their attention to them. Royal Guard, prisoner, misplaced civilian, and dragon alike all waited for what the princess had to say. "Today has been a trying day," she said readily. "We lost a lot of good ponies today to a needless cause, but thankfully some good has come out of it.
I want to thank every pony here who had a hand in stopping the evil that is the Brotherhood of Man. Captain Chainmail, Mr. Goldcoin, Spike, and as much as it pains me to say it, Slisk, all had a hoof in stopping their rampage today, and they have our gratitude for that.
The guards and civilians all stomped their hoofs in applause. At the back of the room, Spike clapped his hands as well. Celestia raised a hoof to silence them, indicating that the speech was not over, and gestured to Luna for her to continue. She did not continue, though, for even when the sound of stomping cleared up, some pony was still clapping, and it wasn't Spike. The crowd all looked to the back of the room. Between the open doors, Lord Second stood in his full attire once more, having evidently tracked down and retrieved his clothes. He was clapping slowly, but upon noticing that all the eyes were on him, he let his hands fall limply to his sides, and he strode into the room through the crowds of ponies.
"Wonderful speech, Selly," he said. "You're all wonderful, I hope you know."
What do you want, Second? Luna demanded.
"I want to fucking retire. But that ain't happening as long as I'm stuck in this fucking country of yours. How am I even expected to move? I'm 1045! Most men my biological age are just praying for the day that they can quit their jobs and live with their relatives, and most men my actual age have been dead for centuries. And yet I'm still slugging through crap like being stabbed and getting imprisoned in stone, and people still expect me to do stuff? I don't want to do stuff! I'm tired! Fuck you guys!"
Celestia raised an eyebrow.
Okay, so you want to leave Equestria? Is that what you're saying?
Finally the bitch gets it!
Well, if you need our help getting home...
Oh no, it doesn't work like that, Second screamed. I would like it if it worked like that, but it fucking doesn't. And do you know why? Dramatic convenience, that's why. This is a 3-act story, and I have to slug through that too, even if I don't want to.
What? Celestia asked. Second, you're not making any sense.
I don't have to make sense, he shouted back. All you need to know is that I plan on destroying Equestria in about a week's time. Go get your precious elements of harmony and think of a way to stop me. Because 5 days from now, I'm going to come marching back into the city with my undead hordes, and everyone in the way is going to get eaten.
The princess's eyes widened at the threat the human made.
No, wait, Second, just be reasonable.
Too late! I'm the villain. Mighty Hasbro has decided. Next week is Zombie Week. Deal with it. He looked over to Luna. And I'll be taking that.
Second held out his hand. Luna tried to pull it back, but the Reaper's horn shot from behind her and flew right into his grasp. The human took the weapon and turned it over in his hands. Inspecting it closely, he opened it up with a click and pulled out some small red things from his coat pocket and placed them inside of it. "It's called an SPAS-12, he said. Reaper's horn, my fucking ass. Do you ponies have to turn everything into an object of mystery and wonder? It's not magic, it's a goddamn gun. Granted, it shouldn't as hell be able to kill you, but then again, I shouldn't be able to shoot lasers from my hands and jump over skyscrapers, so weirder things have happened to me." He raised his weapon and pointed it at Celestia. "Remember the last time I did this, princess?" he asked. Celestia raised her wing and looked underneath it at the scars. "Yeah, I won't miss this time." A consciousness became aware of itself. It stirred slightly. The mind reached out and found language. It was a she. It had gender identity. Now for the rest of that identity. Memories. It found memories. It looked through them and attached those memories to itself. The mind had an identity now. It was Princess Celestia of Equestria. The princess probed around some more. The rest of the mind was all there. Good. And where was the body? She felt around and looked for some nerves. Gradually, she gained control of something. It didn't feel like her body. It was lighter. The senses returned. She woke up. The princess saw nothing but mist. Mist in all directions. She stood up, looking herself over, and was glad to see that she did in fact have a body. It still felt lighter, though. She turned in place to look at the scene. She found that there was only more mist. She couldn't see anything. There was just a white void. Then there were hoof steps. No, not hoof steps. They weren't hoofs. The sound was different, and there were only 2 instead of 4. That implied bad things. Celestia's memory indicated that the human was still around. That could be Lord Second. She turned to face her enemy. That wasn't Lord Second. He was too skinny and short. His hair was light brown instead of gray, and he lacked the mustache and wrinkles. It was definitely a human, but it wasn't the human. It was a different human. But it was still a human she knew. Lord Second's partner in crime, his companion, his son, Lord First, Anthony. He looked blankly at her and spread his arms to either side of him to indicate the mist. "Welcome to the afterlife, princess," he said. "You're dead." And that was Human Chapter 5. This one took a while to do, especially at this point. I'm trying to juggle 3 fanfictions, even though this is probably the longest one. This one was definitely a lot more filled with content than other chapters had been so far. You know, most stuff happened, at least in my opinion, most exciting stuff. This is probably my favorite chapter so far. Later. Mutagravity out.